I tell you to sit y'all's asses down on the couch?
I'm gonna throw the intro in and whatnot, but then after that, I'm gonna let you run.
We're already on.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Are we going? Okay, you guys didn't hear that. You didn't hear that. Welcome to a special fashion edition of Three Black Guys on the Couch. As you can see, Alzo, Renee, Gary, they aren't here. And I'm just gonna be honest with you. They're not here because they don't dress like these fine gentlemen here dress. You know, it's a special edition. So I'm with the great Nick Wooster.
Hello.
The great Johnny Valencia. And Austin.
The mediocre Austin.
The mediocre.
Austin in the middle.
Austin in the middle. Austin in the middle. Austin, take it away.
I'm paying homage to Nick with my shorts. And then shout out to Chris for the loafers.
Yes, shout out to Chris from Blackstock and Weber. Amazing loafers.
Yeah. Well, let's just back up a little bit with my relationship with you starting at Vivienne Westwood 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny how we all know each other now. Is we started at Vivienne Westwood in 2013. I met Rafe, one of your close friends, and then I started working for Rafe, left, moved to New York. Johnny went out to New York, opened Vivienne Westwood. We reconnected when I came back. We reconnected when you moved back to LA. And so I always felt like we've always had jokes about like street style and like we would compare things to like how you used to dress, like how you do dress.
Yeah.
And now here we are. So, you know, it's come full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, epic.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a very small world, but I do feel like I am really honored to know like two of the like, I like you're a legend. You're becoming one in your own right, and so we're so grateful to have you guys both here. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny because I've always been a huge fan of Nick's, and from the Tumblr days to now. And when Austin was like, "Hey man, Nick Wooster's coming to the gym," I was like, "Nick Wooster?" I was like, "The Nick Wooster?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "You know Nick Wooster?" He's like, "Yeah, man, from back in New York." And I'm like, "I hate you, but I love you at the same time."
No.
You know, so I've always been like a huge fan. You've been a huge inspiration to every single ounce of anything that I purchase and buy. You know, so it's an honor. And meeting Johnny, I met Johnny through Austin, and Johnny's just so amazing with his styling capability and how friendly and welcoming you are, and just how open you are with everything. You're like, "Yeah, hey man." I was like, "Okay, I'm Austin's friend O'Neal," and you're like, "Hey, you're my friend too." I'm like, "Damn, that's dope." I've never.
It's good company. You rolling with me. You know what I mean? Like,
say it again.
You're in good company, rolling around with me. You know.
I hate to say it, Austin, but I have met some amazing people through you, and when I say I hate to say it, it pains me. Well, I'm sorry. Go up and continue.
Well, I wanted to read Johnny's bio real quick, just because there's some interesting words in here. You are a self-proclaimed vintage obsessed.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. It's a huge pleasure. I kind of dressed up for both O'Neal and Nick. Today in the morning, I thought about well, I grew up with your images, Nick. So that's been, this was all
Let's talk about what you're wearing.
A huge surprise. Oh, what I'm wearing. Vivienne Westwood. The kilt is Vivienne. I wore this for O'Neal because I'm currently hunting one for you.
Yeah, you'll see me in one pretty soon. Yeah.
Which leads me into this whole vintage obsessive. I'm wearing Margiela tabbies. I think my socks are Vivienne Westwood as well. The shirt is Vivienne, and the blazer is Valentino. My accessories are Gucci and Vivienne. I feel like I'm walking a ball, like a ball in New York. I also wanted to pay homage to how Austin and I met, and the passing of Vivienne Westwood, which greatly affected me both now as in an emotional state, but also through our business. I don't think that you and I would have ever met. I mean, Maybe, but Westwood was really like the catalyst to a lot of how we took on the fashion industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Learned so much, met incredible people. Obviously, like I said, just the small world connection of, you know, the global impact that she had, but you know, the people who wanted to pass through the store, just to come into the store, whether they bought anything, you know, we made connections through these people having that as the place we called home. But you know, obviously, like, you taught me a lot about styling. You taught me about couture, how to sell clothes to women, zipping up a corset. Like, I was clueless. I learned a lot from you. So, you know, seeing you take off Pachuga Vintage, like reworking the corset, like how did you come around to that as like finding that niche with those pieces?
Well, I think it was learning with you, because I in the bio that I sent to O'Neill today in the morning, you know, fashion was purely accidental to me. I was never supposed to work in retail. I was supposed to always, I was training to be a veterinarian, and then my world was books and, you know, academia. As a kid, I was a huge fucking nerd, which is why I say now that I'm a huge obsessive, because as you were there with me in the trenches, zipping up corsets, I was like, wait, so how the fuck are these made? And why were they made? And I explained recently in an interview that it was my time with you at Westwood and with the team, really, that I realized that Westwood's genius couldn't be confined to her contemporary collections. You know, it's this notion that Nick said earlier in the conversation: wear whatever you want. There were really no rules at Westwood, and that's kind of why we're in this warehouse right now. You know.
Yeah, and so you stumbled. So you said fashion wasn't your first thing. How did you stumble into it?
I was living in Paris. I was studying to be a diplomat.
Back.
Veterinarian, diplomat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Pick anyone. Veterinarian, diplomat. How did it go from that to that? Or yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's like I've been I was always a self-aware kid growing up, and at 5 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a veterinarian. Yeah. So I just surrounded myself with animals and books, and I'm just like, all right, cool. So we're doing this. But I mean, I think, you know, going back to why I love Westwood's philosophy is because there's this one quote that I discovered from her not too long ago. It was from 2013, where she says that it's important to know, it's important to go to art galleries. It's important to know the name of plants. It's important to know that the human race is really made up of geniuses, you know? And it was this curiosity that took me to Paris, because I kind of let
Johnny speaks 5 languages, by the way.
Just gonna ask how many languages.
Like incredible with language.
Wow.
Yeah.
I enrolled myself in French as a kid, and then I speak Spanish already. I'm not from here. So, and then when I moved to Paris, I took on Italian, and then I came back to the United States. I took on Russian, and I've been teaching myself Japanese for like a month or so.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about.
How many languages do you speak? Nick?
Nick, how many languages do you speak?
Io parlo come bambino di 5 anni. I speak like a 5-year-old.
Like a 5-year-old.
I don't speak languages. I can barely speak English. And all I know in Japanese for as many times as I've been there is domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
I love it. That's all you need to know.
Nick, how did you get into fashion?
So I've told this story before, but it really is true. When I was a kid, we were middle. Like, we weren't rich and we weren't poor. And I'll never forget when I came home from high school one day, Jay Simpson, who was really cute, but you know, he was this rich kid, and he had a navy cashmere sweater. And I was like, Mom, I want a navy cashmere sweater. And she said, listen, I'm happy to buy you a sweater, but it's not going to be cashmere. If you want cashmere, go work for it. Mm-hmm. And so I took my fat ass down to the nicest clothing store in town that sold navy cashmere sweaters, and asked them one day when I was a junior in high school, do you need any help after school? And they said, yes, we do. And that's how I started working in fashion, and I started working at the age of 16. And, you know, I am so grateful for my mom for sort of doing that. And then also for this guy, Charlie Roth, who gave me a chance. I mean, pretty early on, he was like, Nikki. So in those days, salesmen would come into the store. You know, they sold brands like Ralph Lauren and all these preppy kind of brands, Pendleton, but Gant. So like salesmen would come in with either ties or shirts or something, and Charlie would go, Nikki, come here. Which are the best plaids? And he'd say, pick the best 3. And I'd go 1, 2, 3. And he'd sort of shake his head. Then the next time, hey, Nikki, what are the best stripes, you know, for ties or for rugby shirts? And I'd say this, 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 and this. And he's sort of, and after a year or two, he started taking me on buying trips, first to Kansas City, then Dallas, then New York. And I started working there in the, you know, sort of Christmas breaks and the summers between years of college. And, you know, it was the only thing that I knew that I could do in fashion, because I knew that I didn't draw. I knew that I didn't sew. I knew that I couldn't sketch. And I would, and I, like also the college thing, you know, when I was like a junior in high school, I said to my mom, I want to go to Harvard or UCLA. Now, of course, I had done nothing to prepare for either of those kinds of things, but I made good grades. And she just looked at me and she said, listen, we are happy to send you to school. You have a choice, KU or K-State. And so I was like, well, you guys went to K-State, so I'm going to KU. And they didn't have fashion at KU, so at the University of Kansas. So, you know, I was like, what's the easiest major that I can take and get through the quickest so that I can move to New York? And that's what I did. I majored in journalism, advertising, and made really good grades, but got no education because I was drunk and high the whole time.
Oh shit! Trigger warning.
But I never thought that working retail was legit. So I thought working in an advertising agency was going to be, you know, better. Anyway, through a long and short of it, I ended up working in an advertising agency. I basically didn't get fired, but sort of promoted up and out. Went to go sell advertising space at New York Magazine, was completely ill-suited for that job and got fired. They diagnosed my drug problem before I did. And, you know, was left with, at 26 years old, like, and this woman said to me, what are you going to do? And I was like, I want to be a buyer. And so that's how I started working in fashion, a sort of a long version of that. But
oh, cool.
You know, it was like, I mean, my working in fashion was just 100% necessity. Like I had to work and I liked clothes. So to me, there was really no option, other option.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about both of your stories is that, you know, because traditionally growing up, when you work retail, like, I mean, where I grew up, if you were working at Foot Locker, no one was thinking like, how I'm gonna parlay this Foot Locker opportunity into, you know, making sneakers or taking it to some higher, you know, elite level. Yet you two started off in retail and you did that, you know, and it's just a clear example that it can be there's no ceiling there at all. You can take it anywhere you want to go.
Well, it's really funny how I even ended up in retail because I resonated with your story because I got fired from Vivienne Westwood corporate because I got drunk at an event. And then they thought they were demoting me to working for retail. So I was like, fine. And then the CEO at that time was like, if you behave, right, you'll get your corporate job back, because I missed, you know, everything that I thought growing up as an immigrant in the United States was afforded to someone that worked in corporate, you know? So I was like, I got my corporate job, you know? And then I fumbled because I got drunk at an event, like I said. And then, but I loved working for Westwood so much that I stuck around. But yeah, retail was never supposed to be in the plans. It's like, you know, I went in there really arrogant, thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm supposed to be a diplomat. Like, why am I? But the first day, I remember this black lady comes in and I'm like, oh, cool. Like, so that was an eye-opening experience for me, because as a POC, seeing other POCs in luxury made me feel like, okay, well, the prices aren't too crazy here. But I remember the gesture, like, of having to get down on my knees and put on a shoe on her foot. I was like, I see. I was like, so this will probably be my life until when, you know? And that's when I was like, well, let me move up again. I did it in corporate, you know, because I was interning for Westwood and then I was granted that corporate job. So I was like, I'll work retail again and then climb my way up.
Johnny's in a very modest, but Johnny's one of the hardest workers. Like he would be working and we'd all have to say like, Johnny, like chill out a little bit. Like you're like, we just want to like hang out in the shop, sell a few things and go home.
Yeah, right.
Like, we don't got to worry about making the numbers today. Like stop.
The humble thing is true.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know when he sent me his bio. I was like, so who are your clients? Kim Kardashian. He's working on the Grammys right now. He's been in all different fashion magazines. I'm like, Johnny, I didn't know. I was looking at it. I didn't know any of this about you at all.
Well, how much of it do you feel like, and this for both of you guys, how much of it is like the hard work or just having a great eye as a buyer, having good instincts with styling? Like where does the hard work and then just like God-given ability play in?
Well, first of all, I don't know the answer to that question, but I do believe, and this is kind of an AA thing, it's kind of a 40, almost 50 years of work experience kind of thing. You know, there are a handful of people in life that seemingly get things handed to them. You know, they exist. But most people, especially most successful people, it's like the stuff you don't know about, the stuff that isn't on Instagram, the stuff that isn't on television. It's like the fucking grind. And so, at least for me, I can only say that I believe that the reason that I'm sitting here today and that people like you guys maybe know about me in some way, because never in my life did I expect or anticipate or think that I would have the kind of life that I now seem to have.
Yeah.
But what is behind it is 35 years of work. And retail figures prominently into that because, so I was 22 when I moved to New York. I started working first as an assistant department manager at Saks Fifth Avenue, which was basically meant I was on the floor at the age of 26. So 1986, by 87, I was an assistant buyer and then became promoted as a buyer at Barney's. Then 89, I was the designer collections buyer at Bergdorf Goodman to open the men's store. And then by 93, I had left retail. Well, I was overseeing retail for Calvin Klein, but I wasn't sort of in a store. And then by 1995 was working for Ralph Lauren in design. That whole arc in my 20s and 30s, you know, I was sort of on the ascendancy, so to speak. I was also not sober for most of that time. I got sober and then I seemed to crash and burn and my career didn't do the things that I thought it would when I got sober. But by 2004, when I was 44 years old, because all my other friends were really becoming successful at that point, I couldn't get arrested. And I was living in Los Angeles and I ended up working on the floor of Barney's in Beverly Hills selling women's designer dresses. And I did that for 7 months and I was humiliated at the idea of doing it, but I needed to work. And it was like an AA thing, you know, it's like, just do the next right thing. Like, you need a job. And I did. And so that's what I did. And I'm convinced that that action signaled to the universe that I was like willing to do whatever it took, so that really 6 years later, I was on the sartorial list. Like how, you know, and was the men's fashion director at Neiman Marcus and Bergdorf Goodman. I mean, I only had to be on the floor for 7 months. And it was actually, of all the jobs I've ever had, I tell people this all the time, it was such an amazing job because for the first time and only time in my life, I didn't have to worry about next quarter, next month, next year, you know, next season. It was like I punched in and I punched out. And the minute I left, it was done. And it was, now I didn't make as much money as I wanted or needed to make to live the kind of life that I felt that I deserved. But like at the end of the day, I ate, I was able to get around and I had a roof over my head. So it did exactly what it needed to do. And I'm really grateful for that moment that I had because it sort of took me out of the rat race of like worrying about what my next job was. And the next two weren't so ideal either. But the point was that I was on a trajectory to get me to where I went. But the other thing is I had to work. So that's what I did. I bitched and complained to certain friends, but I tried to put on a game face, and like, that's what I did. You know, give someone a dime's worth for a nickel. Like, you just do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I gotta back it up a little bit and ask, walk us through this whole sartorialist thing. How did that happen? And
You didn't let Johnny answer my question.
I'm sorry. What was your Johnny?
Question was hard work
Johnny, I
versus
apologize.
talent.
Oh, right.
To you,
I was
Johnny.
like,
Go ahead.
whoa,
Go ahead.
yeah, like Nick, oh, it's amazing. Oh, right. Well, I think that, style is, I think good taste. You know, we say this all the time. Good taste is really difficult to find because no amount of money can bestow that upon a person. Then there is the studying. You know, I get asked all the time. It's like, how do you go about buying this and buying that? And I'm like, well, do you know what you're looking at? You won't know what you have on your hands if you haven't done the research, you know? So whatever job you want, you know, first they say dress for the part that you want, right? That's actually been scientifically proven. And secondly, I think putting in the work, like Nick said, there's a lot of components that go into that. Showing up. Yeah. That's like, so many of these are like AA mantras, right? And I think being kind to people, that goes a long way. And then, right, it's the thing that they teach us, be of service. So I think growing up as an immigrant in this country, being of service was to my benefit, because, and this is how I got the job at Westwood. As an intern, I was like, wait, so all these entitled kids are coming in, because that's who I worked with, right? The showroom interns. All these entitled kids are coming in through no fault of their own. I'm like, they're rich, that's fine. But they're not doing the work. They're clocking in, clocking out, taking like 2-hour lunches, and then they're wondering how it's possible for the VP to ask them to do an Excel sheet when they're only here to steam samples, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I got this. So then I was like, let me, in my mind, right, become the king of the interns. And and I proposed my help to the person who I spotted needed the most help, the VP of sales. And I was like, sure, you know, I'll stay with you until 9 p.m. doing Paris couture orders. And then I remember one time, and I'll leave it on this note, right? Because it is a lot of hard work. I remember one time as an intern, it was unpaid. It was still during these times when, like, you know, the whistle at Hearst hadn't been blown yet. So I was unpaid. I was on the bus. I hadn't eaten all day, and I was on the phone. I think the showroom had given me this cookie to like take home with me, as big as my
cigarette.
fucking head. A cookie and an espresso. And I called my mom, and I was like, "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, I'm not. Why? Da, da, da." And her response was really simple. She's like, "No one's holding a gun to your head. You can leave whenever you want." But it was the promise of this, you know, job that I wanted, and also the ability to really humble yourself in this position, because my grandma was pissed. She was like, "You're fucking working for free?" She's like, "This is why you went to Paris for?" And I was like, "Trust me." I was like, "It's part of the plan." And it worked out. But again, it was this like waiting on the universe, or like, you know, chutzpah to kick in, and just, you know. But yeah, show up, kids.
Yeah, wow. That's
You felt like it was a combination of waiting and continually working.
Consistency is key. Yes, consistency is key in everything. It's like you eat something consistently enough that's either healthy or bad for you, and you'll see results. You know, it's you study something hard enough with enough consistency and enough knowledge of it, you become it. You know, it's people love an overnight success story, you know, but that doesn't exist unless it's a very specific and a small percentile of, we speak of Nepo babies now, right? But
What?
Nepo babies, nepotism babies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've never heard of that before, Austin? Everybody knows what Nepo baby is.
You don't know what a Nepo
was like
baby
some like
You know what a Nepo
Nepo baby.
Nepo.
Nepotism.
Sounds like something you'd hear on like Robertson in Santa Monica.
A Nepo baby.
Yeah,
No, but
some weird shit.
It's so true, and it's so. I mean, obviously, Hollywood's the obvious example, and they gave many of them. But I mean, the whole fashion world, much of the fashion world, is traced similarly. So many, and not to single out Vogue or Condé Nast, but so many people that have been able to work there are daughters and sons of, usually daughters of famous people. It doesn't have to be just fashion, but they come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Because the other really unjust thing about the fashion world is how it is not built for people to sort of support them, to be able to support themselves, to be able to sort of move up. Usually, these jobs are so low paying that you've got to have some other means of support because it's not really. Wow. And it's one of the worst. Advertising is bad. PR can be bad. I think the entertainment business can be bad. There are many terrible, industries at the entry level. It's just fashion is particularly bad.
One of the I've noticed, sorry to cut you off, but one of the things I've noticed about so many of these places is people hold the title of like, you work for this place, you can take less money, so you can say you do X job at Vogue or Condé, whatever, like Westwood in any of these places. That's kind of held over your head of like, you get to work for this prestigious, thing, but we're not going to pay you, accordingly or whatever.
It's really interesting you say that because I was making the mental note of how this whole Westwood thing even happened, right? I gave myself a title at Westwood. I'm like, no, I'm going to be, what I call myself? Because they wanted to just be like, okay, you're the sales assistant. And I'm like, no, I need to be more, because with the title comes the pay, and I think that it's so important. I have an assistant now and I'm teaching her how to ask for more, even when it's not within the office. I'm like, my resources, and I tell her, I'm really upfront with her. I'm like, my resources are limited right now because we're still a very small team. Mm-hmm. However, go out there and, you're not going to be with me forever. Yeah. So having great mentors in whatever industry you're in is really, really helpful for, it's you stand on the shoulders of giants. Like, it's not that hard.
So let me go back to you giving yourself a title. Uh-huh. So even though they were saying you were a sales assistant, you were like, no, I'm going to give myself a title. Yeah. So in a sense, manifesting what you're going to become.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
That's really important.
Yeah.
I think I learned that from Beverly Johnson. She was the
model.
Yeah, the first black model to be on the cover.
Oh, she was
Vogue.
Bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know who Beverly Johnson is?
No.
I do.
Of course, Nick does. You know what I'm saying? Look up Beverly Johnson. Not now.
Is she still alive?
Yeah, she's still alive. Yeah, she looks amazing.
She has a daughter, right? That models too, doesn't she? I think, or something like that.
Probably.
A Nepo baby?
Huh?
Yeah.
Nepo baby. Listen, Beverly Johnson can do no wrong in my eyes.
Okay.
I want to go back to my question for Nick. The sartorialist thing. How did that whole thing?
Yeah.
Because there was a time, even now though, you're still everywhere now, but there was a time when, man, Nick was plastered everywhere online. Bing, 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 bing. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I've told this story before, but this is what you have to understand. So from 2002 until 2010, 6 of those years I was living in Los Angeles, and I was in a kind of a career, I don't want to say wasteland, but it wasn't anything like what I had done before, which was Bergdorf's, Barney's, Calvin, Ralph, John Bartlett. And then I was working for, Splendid, a t-shirt company, and this heinous woman named Rose Nichols, who lives here.
Shout out, what's her name?
Splendid, like the company that's still around?
Well, they're sort of around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rose Nichols?
Rose Nichols.
Shout out Rose Nichols.
A horrible, horrible person.
Oh, God.
But with all that said, these were not sort of like the jobs that I felt that I was entitled to or that I deserved. But, you know, I needed to work, and I'm so grateful to both of them for giving me the opportunity. The Splendid thing was amazing. And at any rate, in the fall of 2009, I read in Women's Wear that Tommy Fazio, who had been the men's fashion director at Neiman's and Bergdorf's, was leaving that job. And I remember talking to my sponsor and saying, you know, this is the job that I always wanted. When I was the men's buyer in 1993, I had asked them to be the men's fashion director, and they said, oh, we don't have that job. Okay. So then Michael Bastian became the men's fashion. And I was like, wait, that was supposed to be my job. And then Tommy Fazio, that was supposed to be my job. So I knew that I had nothing to lose, because for the first time in my life, in those years of living in Los Angeles, I was really okay. Like, I was okay with my life. I was sort of, you know, 13, 14 years sober. I was working the steps, and, you know, for the second time in a very thorough way. And I sort of was at that place, and I really believed this then, that so when I told my sponsor, there's this job, and, you know, I mean, there's no way I'm ever going to get it, but I want to go for it. And he was like, you should absolutely do that. And I really thought, I've been out of that realm for 7 or 8 years, so there's no way I'm going to get it, but there's no harm in asking, you know? And that was like, and I wasn't afraid. So I went through the steps, and it took 3 months. And I know that they exhausted a lot of other candidates before they got to me. But in January of 2010, like, literally, I gave Splendid 3 days notice. I'm like, listen, I got this job, and on Saturday I got to be on the plane, or actually it was Thursday, I've got to be on the plane to go to Milan. And so they were like, yeah, that's amazing. Of course you can do that. And, you know, I tried to clean up what I could. And anyway, I landed in Milan on Saturday morning, I went to work on Saturday morning, and the job of fashion director for a retail store is to be the kind of eyes, ears, and voice for a store. So your job is to go to fashion shows. So I, Saturday morning, went to, you know, the schedule of shows, and Tommy Ton and Scott Schumann took my picture on that first day. And I, you know, what I say about all this, and when you say you see me around, I am convinced, excuse me, that the reason why that happened is because I was fresh meat. You know, blogs have been around for 2, 3, 4 years. The sartorialists have been around for 2 or 3 years. And I know that I have a look, you know, I look a certain way. And although the dress code was to wear a suit, like a jacket and a tie, I still had this hair, and, you know, I had a handlebar mustache at the time. And so I looked a certain way, and I didn't look like anyone else. And so I'm convinced that those two things, coupled with the timing, and listen, I this whole thing, like me sitting here today, I won the lottery. Like, that was my winning the lottery, because I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I showed up, and that's how it happened. Like, it's really no more. I couldn't tell you how it happened. I couldn't tell you why it happened. I can just tell you that it happened.
Do you remember the day when either you realized it, or people said to you, hey, you're popping up everywhere? Or did your bosses say, hey, man, we see you? I mean, what was like?
They did, and they were not happy about it.
Really?
Because it's human nature. They were jealous. Like, the guy that I worked for, he's another heinous queen.
Shout out to heinous queen.
Ken Downing. But the thing is, he actually, I'm so grateful to him for giving me that job. Like, I'm so grateful to him for giving me that job. He was a heinous boss, and he was super jealous of the attention that I was getting. That is 100% for sure. And it kind of, I saw it unfolding. I knew as I was popping up, I'd set Google alerts for myself, because I wanted to sort of, and I could see
Check your angles.
Well, I wanted to see what was being said. And you're right. It was like that, those first 6 months, the first 6 months of 2010. Yeah. Because what's Tumblr? Like, I didn't even know what the fuck Tumblr was in those days. I thought they were making fun of me, basically. And then because there was like a meme that came out maybe that summer, and I really thought it was people making fun of me. Like, I didn't know.
What was it?
And they called me Woost God. And I was like, are they making fun of me? It's like the first time I heard somebody call me an OG, and I'm like, what does that mean? Old gay?
Oh,
I had no idea.
that's funny.
Which I am, but old gay.
Same.
But it's just, I guess I'm not really answering the question.
No, you are. You are.
It just, but as it was happening, I'm like, ooh, this is going to get me in trouble. And it did. I was only in that job for a year and a half until I got fired. And again, I'm so grateful, not that I got fired, because it gave me the sort of the opportunity to do what I'm doing now, and it was like, I didn't need to be in that job longer. Even though I still, of all the jobs that I ever had, it's kind of the job I still would like to do. But everything's different. Retail isn't even the same. Like working for a department store today, not to shit on department stores, but like they're not even the same places they were 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Johnny, if you can divulge. If you can't, I completely understand. But for the Grammys, what are you doing for the Grammys?
I am costume designing for one of my clients who's nominated for, I think, Adele's album. And what else? I'm restoring a client's archive too. Couture pieces. I got into appraisals. I grew up on watching the Antiques Roadshow, so now I'm like, oh, cool. This is my job now. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I asked Nick this before, and this is just a cliche question that I like to ask people that are just well versed in fashion. And either one of you can answer this before. Nick has answered this before, so he's probably gonna be like,
You want to ask me?
Huh? No, not you. Well, you're already doing that. You're already doing something. We'll choose higher.
Okay.
But I mean, why haven't you done your own line, and are you going to do your own line?
So I first wanted to say that I really resonated with your story about that job that you last had and getting fired from it and having the sky be your limit in a way, because I thought that I was going to do Westwood forever. I don't know why, until I got let go from the company. And that was actually, the God shot, right? That you call them. Because Austin had left already, and I was sort of manning the ship, and hiring people and doing the buys, and that was my dream job.
You got fired after that?
I got let go. Because they saw it as a conflict of interest that I was selling Westwood on the side, even though
it wasn't from the shop.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was a dissonance. They were like, "Oh no, we can't.
Yeah.
We can't have you here." But retail, the landscape of retail completely changed. And again, I feel very like right moment, right time, where vintage used to be called secondhand. Now it's like, oh, you're wearing vintage? Oh my God. No, it's all a marketing name, But why I haven't started my own line, I told this in the New York Post, that my aim now was to build fashion chimeras almost, I've been interested in, this is weird, I've been interested in Greek mythology since I was a kid. So I'm like, why don't we fucking cut everything up? And we did that with I did that with a gown. I did that with a Westwood gown, and it made its way to Vogue. And this is like what I want to say. Like, everything I do is not so that it gets plastered everywhere. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I love the press, but I'm doing it because I want to see if I can. I'm taking things apart and rebuilding them. So I told the New York Post, I'm like, I did this set from like this 1960s Pucci deconstructed like skirt suit set, and then we own the references too. So I own archival Mugler and Westwood and you name it, because I'm fucking love it. So we're taking the Mugler and tracing the patterns from that, making a bra, and then my inspiration is now Carmen Electra and Prince. And there's this really funny story that Prince made Carmen Electra wear hot pants only in the 90s. So I'm like, let's do that, and then just and like one story leads to another, and I think that's kind of what I want to base my creations on, you know? The stories that have already been put in place. Again, I mean, and environmentalism too. It's like look at what's going on with our planet, you know, overconsumption and overproduction. This is why the retail landscape has changed, you know? H&M, there's a reason why Forever 21 is, you know, bankrupt, because the consumers are tired of seeing the same thing. So if it already exists, ideally, I would love to have a class where I teach people how to make things.
Yeah.
You know, I think that is what's missing in society today. And that's why I'm really happy that Gen Z is taking matters literally into their own hands, you know? And you always adhere to the youth if you want to see progress.
Yeah, that's actually brilliant. I love the Chimera.
Oh yeah,
That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean,
nerd.
that's, yeah. Wow.
You know what a
They can't even
chimera
top
is?
that.
No, there's no topping
Do you
here.
actually know what a chimera is? You're just saying that.
Bro, I know what a chimera. Bro, you know I'm into anime.
Spell it.
Really?
I can't spell, bro. I'm a horrible speller. I used to enter. The funny thing is, I used to enter spelling bees all the time,
Really?
in hopes that God would just touch me and make me a great speller. But I'd be the first one, you know, out of it. I'm not a good speller. But no. That was just a great analogy. A great analogy.
I want to ask Nick about where he sees retail landscape going as an expert. Like, how is it different? Where is it going? Like, what do you feel about it right now?
Well, I mean, commerce is always going to happen. I mean, it's been going on since push carts and, you know, people bartering and trading for things. So I don't ever doubt that we will buy and sell. And, you know, clothing, fashion is it's a need. It's a necessity. It's a, you know, shelter, food, clothing. Like those are the three things that we have to survive on. I mean, technically, I guess we don't have to, but we do. So the thing is, I don't know the exact answer. I do believe fully that that actual physical stores will continue to have a place, but do we need suburban malls dotted with hundreds of the same thing, you know, 10 miles apart? I doubt it. But I think destinations, and again, I think about myself in cities, so I can't really speak to the rural thing, but you know, I guess the good news about where we are today is that it doesn't matter where you live because of online shopping. You can basically have anything you want if you can afford it, or if you have access to high-speed Wi-Fi internet. But it will seem that it will be a combination of the two. But like right now, Los Angeles, I think we're really okay. Los Angeles, in my opinion, has the best specialty stores in the United States right now relative to New York. But unfortunately doesn't have I was helping a guy who lives in Hancock Park, 70-year-old guy, rich, who his daughter was getting married and he needed he had a Savile Row suit, but he wanted new shirt, tie, braces, socks, handkerchief. Okay, there isn't a store in Los Angeles to do that. Yes, we ordered some stuff online, but with Barney's being gone, and I understand 70-year-old guys who want classic clothes is not the business, but it's a void. Mm-hmm. And so I do think, unfortunately, that we're going to have to live with a lot of voids, for every Dover Street and every, concept store that's coming around. There's going to be not those places that we used to be able to go and buy pocket squares or wool socks and
traditional menswear.
Right, traditional menswear. I mean, it's already disappeared, vaporized from department stores. Saks used to have a classic menswear business. Bergdorf still does, but it's a fraction of its former self. Barney's doesn't exist. Bloomingdale's doesn't really have it. Nordstrom doesn't. They have it, but it's usually at the lower end. So it's tough. It's really tough. And I understand things need to change and things do change, but I think there will always be concept stores. I think there will always be Apple and Hermes and these kinds of the best at what they do, the best in class kind of thing. But I think it's going to be hard to navigate anything that's not that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Should we do a line of pocket squares?
I mean, pocket squares aren't really my thing. You know, it's interesting. I was reading this article after Fashion Week, and they were saying how, you know, and Nick and I briefly discussed it, how streetwear is gonna, you know, go back to its respective, you know, lane and whatnot, and high fashion is gonna be in its lane because they were once juxtaposed or, you know, merging together at one particular time. And Nick and I were having the conversation. I was saying to him, you know, in my, you know, limited knowledge, I was like, well, the person from the streetwear community that's had a taste of high fashion, had a taste of something that's supposed to be dope and high end and couture and cool and whatnot.
Passed away.
I can't see them saying, man, I'm you know, for lack of a better word, going back to my hoodie and, you know, sweatpants type thing. I like that. I want to try this. I want to delve into this more. I want to make it a little. I mean, you see it with different rappers. You see it with different artists and people that are wearing things that guys in the 90s and early 2000s wouldn't wear, right? It's changing. A great A$AP Rocky is a great example of that. And either one of you can answer, doesn't matter. What do you think? Where do you see it? And again, we've had this conversation.
Well, yeah, and I understand that this may not be popular with, you know, your listeners, like the people who
people.
What's been so great about the past 7 or 8? Did I say that?
No.
No,
No,
Oh my
Austin,
God.
listen, before Nick, not to cut you off, I want you to hold that thought. You guys heard Austin say that, right? So for those of you out there, if you see him on the street,
Beat him up.
thank you. All right, continue, Nick.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, you know, the thing that's been so amazing about the last 7 or 8 years in men's fashion is that it opened up the floodgates to an entirely different customer. And, you know, what was always called streetwear, which really was code for urban, you know, you know. And so the fact that all of that sort of became normal or became part of the discourse, like this was now fashion, is an amazing thing, you know, because if you go into any department store now, the people shopping there were not the people shopping there 20 years ago or even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so in that regard, streetwear has been an incredibly amazing influence on menswear. But I've been a very harsh critic about this idea that the business suffered, the menswear business suffered when things like leather-soled shoes got replaced by sneakers or tailored jackets got replaced by hoodies, that the craftsmanship of menswear was being lost in that thing because, you know, it doesn't take the same skill set to make a hoodie as it does to make a tailored jacket.
Right.
And, you know, to last a pair of leathers, Goodyear welted shoes is like a whole different thing than making a sneaker. There's no problem with either one of them, but it's just that when we did that, when the menswear business did that to itself, of course things changed. I mean, yes, there was probably a lot of, there were new customers that were brought to the table, but like stores that used to sell $2,500 jackets were then selling $800 hoodies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it wasn't like, oh, they're buying 3 hoodies for every 1 coat. It's like, it's a 1-for-1 kind of thing. So it changed. And again, this is just my sort of like observation. I'm sure that somebody could tell me differently, but fundamentally I understood that was happening. What happened in Paris this last season or this last month, you know, I just got back last Monday, last week was, and I do believe this, and I am really happy to see it, is there were actually clothes on the runway. And what I mean by that is more tailored, more sort of like less reliant on logos, hoodies, and sneakers, and more about beautiful boots. And let me tell you something, it's more expensive. Now, will that translate? Because here's what always happens anyway. It doesn't matter what the runways show. Mm-hmm. What's going to be in the stores is going to be a direct reflection of what's selling now. So if Saks is still selling hoodies, guess what? Doesn't matter what was shown on the runway. They're buying hoodies. Gotcha. If sneakers are still selling, and even though Dries only showed boots and clogs, they're going to buy sneakers. You know what I mean? I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying that Dries didn't show sneakers. But the point is that the business will always be a direct result of the business. So it doesn't matter what's being shown, but what's bubbling up and what will happen is I think that's going to expose guys who were wearing hoodies and sneakers into something new. And so that is what I will be excited to see. And it'll be the interpretation because, you know, not everybody can do head to toe of super expensive clothes. I mean, like the prices of some of these brands is insane right now.
Yeah.
You know, but for me, it's encouraging to see that there's a return to something where there's actual craftsmanship and tailoring. And that to me is interesting for me personally. It may not be to the rest of the world, but it is to me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So a great response, Nick. You talk about voids and you talk about craftsmanship, right? I think that O'Neill, I think that for every push, there's a pull, right? The streetwear community took inspiration from Raf Simons when Raf was developing these cuts in really luxurious fabrics. Virgil Abloh at Louis Vuitton took that to new heights. He passed away. We talk of this void, you know, who's going to replace Virgil? And but also the notion of trends, what we see on the runway doesn't necessarily translate to what people are going to be buying. Because I think, and there's a direct correlation in how we're consuming information nowadays, and how and the buying power of communities that historically have been marginalized. You know, Latinos are coming up in this country in terms of buying power. The Latino buyer, what's he buying? What are they buying? You know. I think also in terms of the way that we consume media now, think about it. You know, when Shalom Harlow walked the finale of McQueen's, I believe, Spring/Summer 1999, when she was sprayed by those robots, that caused national headlines, right? There was no social media the way that we have it right now. Yeah. So I can see suits all day long, and I can tell people like, you know, learn about Savile Row and what King Charles wore and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
How long is that going to live online, you know, before you scroll on to the Nike, the Prada Raf that looks like Nike, the Forever 20 Prada, like, bro,
just
you
Jared.
know. What the fuck is Jared? You know, just Jared selling t-shirts now. I don't know, just t-shirts. Yeah. You know, I that's a joke. But it's a, you know, how fucking amazing would it be to tell people like we need more cobblers and less influencers, right? But how out of touch would that come across, right?
Yeah.
We look at the loss in craftsmanship. All these people that are on Savile Row are of a generation that are traditionalists, right? I'm getting all of my press pieces framed. Going to this framer alone, just as an example, right? It's a middle-aged woman helping this man that's almost on his way out. It's a family-owned business. And I asked her the other day, I'm like, who's gonna replace you guys? She's like, I don't know. Yeah. And I'm like, find an apprentice.
Wow.
You know? But this is me, the alarmist, you know? I feel like, no political affiliation by any means, but I feel like the Bernie Sanders of like the vintage world.
No, I love that.
Like,
this was on Bill. This was exactly being spoken about on Bill Maher last night on Real Time. You know, we have this idea that in order to be successful, you have to go to college. And college is a total racket and a scam.
Yes.
What we really need are tradespeople. You know, think about it. If my father was a mechanic, if I had 1 ounce of the skill that my father possesses, I'm sure I could make even more money than I'm making now, because if you're really good at a trade, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, tailors, cobblers, I'm sure there's many more welders, like so many of these jobs. I tell fashion people, kids this too. If you're a design student, and of course, every kid who's in design school sees themselves as the next Virgil or Raf Simons or whatever. And okay, great. It's great to have dreams. But I promise you, not all of you are going to be that. However, if you possess some skills in the world of design and you're really organized and you became a production person, you would put a 0 on the end of what your earning potential will be relative to a creative director. Mm-hmm. Any good production person is easily going to make twice as much or 10 times as much as a good designer any day of the week, especially as you continue to go on. The same with pattern makers. Pattern makers are the real designers in the world, not designers, because they're the ones who have to bring it to life. Mm-hmm. The sketch, the drape, the whatever. And those people are truly the most remarkable talents that we have. And I always think that if you have that ability, that's where you should go, because you will always have a job. Let me tell you something. The world doesn't need a 68-year-old creative director, but a 68-year-old pattern maker will work for the rest of his or her life.
Sounds like, it's a great parallel to like Hollywood, like with editors and your writers and the people that are just behind all of the
behind the scenes
people that it takes to make something come to life.
Yeah.
You don't hear about them. You don't know about them. It's just the people that are in front of the camera. But there's a whole city of individuals, from the costume designers, everything that gives you everything. It's the whole village.
But like what Johnny was saying, the way we consume media, like that's not the sexy job, is the behind the scenes person. You're not seeing him in your feed.
You can be a sexy cobbler. Like, what I mean? That's the thing. It's like we take for granted that now, given the platforms that we have on our phones, right? Marketing yourself is free. You can live your own, you can be your own editorial star every single day. You know what I mean? I think that when Nick rose to prominence, it was like you said, right place, right time. You were at the forefront of what menswear should look like. Is this very romantic, very put together look that made people fall in love with you, from all walks of life. You didn't have to adhere to whatever, you just looked at it, right? You looked at images of Nick and you were like, wow, I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Now and I tell people this all the time, it's like, I hate talking about trends because I think we should look at the world in a bigger scope than that. I don't like talking about one single designer, because if you talk about one single designer, you lose your own inspiration. It's like, find what inspires you.
What's interesting, about what the both of you are saying, and what makes something come to my mind is narratives. Right? Narratives are so influential. And I was talking to someone about marketing and pushing their product the other day, and I was telling them, I was like, I feel like it's less about the actual product that you created, even though the craftsmanship and everything is just gorgeous. But they were talking about how to get it out and how to get it seen, and I was like, you just have to create a dope narrative, because if you make a fucking pair of socks, but you put this person that are wearing your socks in this lavish or cool or just nostalgic, any situation that'll make me feel like I want to be there, I'm buying your socks.
Buying the socks.
If you're in Cuba and you're about to go have a drink and a beautiful person walks by and you want to dance, but you got the socks on, I'm like, shit, I'm gonna get me some of them socks.
I'm gonna get 3 pairs.
It's like Bombas. Bombas has become this amazing brand because of the story behind it.
Yeah, the very same thing. I was talking to my daughter about that last night, about how you can be a superstar in any realm with social media. You can be a superstar doctor. You can be a superstar anesthesiologist. You can be a superstar cobbler. You can. There is no one
superstar diplomat.
Superstar diplomat, right?
Diplomat, veterinarian.
No one descended from the heavens and said you can only be a star basketball player, football, actor, No, you can be anything. So, and I was explaining that to her. So I find it really ironic that we're talking about
That's
that
cool.
Right now. But what were you saying about Bumble? Because I personally,
Well, it's a sock brand that, socks are dopey in a way. But the point is they've got a story behind it. They give one away for every pair that they sell, and they're doing it with underwear and T-shirts. And the top 3 items that are needed in homeless shelters are socks number 1, underwear number 2, and T-shirts number 3. And so the point is that they've taken a sort of generic category, socks, and made it into an interesting story. Yeah. And I believe that's part of their success. Everything is storytelling really now. And it's because, I think somebody already said this, but it's like you could have the world's best product, but if you can't package it, it's going to flounder.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the things I think you do better than to my knowledge, you're an incredible storyteller with the vintage pieces because they've lived a previous life, but you love putting that into like the visuals, the words behind it. Like it's very well thought. So I think I really appreciate about how you take the vintage pieces and you give it a new life, and it's like there's a new story that can be told with it.
Thank you. And I think that is drawn from vulnerability. You have to be you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position to continue a story, Yeah. And this is where community comes in, because what we're doing right now is part of that. It's how we are all talking about our feelings in a manner that's emotive to our respective industries. But what are we taking away from all of this? Only your listeners will tell you the feedback based on today's conversation. But it's the storytelling. I mean, we look at ancient man, we sat around the fire talking about like this, it's Aristotle, Socrates, like this is all documented. We're just now living in a completely different environment, that in a structure that we've made for ourselves, capitalism,
religion.
Talking
about a storytelling.
Yeah. And it can be beautiful if you remove yourself from it from time to time and then come back to it. I think for 2023, my biggest resolution was to stop embracing the sad fashion boy trope, Well, Austin knows my story. Battling with addictions, since I was 14 years old, and finally coming out of that 20 years later, I'm like, oh wait, like I thought that making because I love making hats. Halston, Lanvin started off as milliners. And I take a lot of inspiration from Halston, And so I started making hats. And then one day I woke up and I was so depressed. And I was like, the only thing that's going to make me feel better is if I create something,
Yeah.
Now, and then when I was in the throes of my addiction, I thought I was like, I can only create when I'm depressed, And it's but think about what that tugs at the heart. It tugs at the heartstrings, because it feeds into this idea that only tragic and forlorn artists are able to create beauty. No, it's like now I take inspiration from meditation, the 12 steps, sobriety, things that are unsexy, But and Austin, you said something really interesting when O'Neill came over to with your girlfriend, where Austin was like, you can live your wildest dreams, through sobriety. And I was like, I used to think that my wildest dreams was to have $1 million and like run a whatever business, right? And then be super successful in the eyes of the industry that I'm in. That's all achievable,
Yeah.
But my wildest dreams is to be at peace with myself, have a great relationship with the people around me, and create from a mentality of stability and peace.
Yeah.
Zen.
And yeah, damn, you said something when you were talking.
I say a lot of
You
things.
say great things. You made me think of something I wanted to
Yeah.
jump on, but now I've forgotten. What okay.
The sartorial Socrates.
No, don't do that. Now you're making me forget everything. Gosh, I wanted to touch on something that you just said. Oh, okay, it'll come back.
Community conversation.
Conversation.
Neolithic man.
Telling a
Campfire.
story, narratives, campfire stories.
Yeah.
'Cause that's narratives. It's not coming to me.
I wanted to switch gears for just a minute, but based on something you said earlier in the talk, Johnny, about taste, and this is one of those things that I think is completely under talked about, underdeveloped, appreciated in our world today. And it was the only thing that mattered when I learned how to be a fashion person, and that was taste. From the moment I started working in a clothing store, the Roth family in Salina, Kansas, the Pressman family at Barney's in the 80s, they were 100% about taste and your taste. And like they would, and so the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because I think that like this world that we're in today of like Zoom and how that somehow is replacing going to work, which I have a huge problem with. I guess because I don't do that every day. So it's easy for me to say. But the thing that is so I know for a fact is that I would not have because I believe you have to have a raw, it's like a diamond. Like there's a raw piece of material there to be able to polish into something. But first it's the raw material. I do believe that taste is a kind of a God-given thing, like, musical talent or the ability to play sports or something. But you have to practice. And I do believe that taste is a skill that has to be developed and refined and honed. And the way that I learned taste was via side-eye. And I don't think you could learn that on Zoom. It's like that.
Can you give us an example of the via side eye thing?
Yeah, like, well, I'll also tell the story. So everything that I learned in this in the fashion world, I learned from Peter Rizzo, who was my boss at Barney's. And the very first buying appointment I ever went on was, in those days, I was a suit buyer, a clothing buyer. And so the way you buy suits is from a stack of swatches. Like you're looking at the fabric, and then later you decide which way it's going to go. Is it going to be single-breasted, double-breasted, 3-button, 2-button, whatever? So you go through a stack of swatches, and Peter said, okay, have at it. And I was like, yes, no. And so Peter didn't say a single word through the entire thing. And I was like sweating bullets. Like the sweat was going down my butt crack. Like it was so terrifying. And at the end of it, he didn't say anything. He just said, let me see your outs. Like, let me see the ones you said no to. And that was such a powerful thing because he said, I don't care what you've chosen.
Some strong water, huh? Yeah.
He had a similar experience.
He had a similar experience, yeah.
Hilarious.
I know I'm going to lose it any minute now too, because I feel like coughing coming on. But Peter was like, let me see your outs. Let me see the ones you didn't select. And that's when he started grilling me about, why didn't you choose that? Why didn't you choose that? Because I was missing, like the point was the things that I missed. And I think that all of that is, you learn that by being with someone. You can't learn that over a computer screen or a phone screen. Yeah. And so it's those intangible skills, but also just so like I used to do this too. If you walk into a showroom and you're like, oh my God, I love that. And somebody just looks at you sideways like, really? That's how I learned how to sort of like reel it in or to sort of refine it, because it's like, you don't have to verbally masturbate every single emotion and thing you think about. Sometimes it's good to just kind of hold back. And then, and so all of these things, which I believe are fundamental to working in the fashion business, I had to learn the hard way, which was like making a fool of myself, doing it with someone, and being in person with someone because you can't. And so I really wonder what this next generation is going to be like if everything is through a screen. I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think it'll be different.
Yeah, I was thinking about how earlier Johnny was saying how it's been scientifically proven how, when the way you dress, how it makes you feel and and that's so important because, some people that may view fashion and some people having an obsessive, love affair with it to be frivolous and stupid and I don't care about all that. Like I think I read an article with Rick Owens saying that he designs the way he designs, because there's so many beautiful things in the world for you to go see that you shouldn't be like perusing your closet for too long. You should go out there and experience the world. Yeah, still he's Rick Owens and he does what he does. But I am a big believer in that the way you dress, it conjures up a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And when it conjures up this feeling, you go out and you do and you move in a different way. It just is what it is, and the emphasis put on the way you dress and the way you take care of yourself and the way you manicure yourself and I think should be increased even more because I think we'd get more productivity, we'd get more positive results if people were like, okay, today when I get up, I'm putting this together and I'm going out and this is who I'm going to represent myself or present myself as.
To tie it back into what Nick was saying though, like I remember working at Vivienne early on. I had never sold women's clothes and definitely not sold couture, so selling to, someone who can go in there and spend 5-10 grand at Vivienne, like sometimes you have to learn firsthand, like you're saying, the side eye thing, like you have to learn firsthand through somebody, but also having an experience as someone in there to buy. And like some people don't know what gives them confidence. So like having, tastemakers and, people who are stylists to come in and show you how to put something together, show you something. It's like, oh, wow, that actually makes me feel really good. I feel like I can go out and go get that job today. Yeah. I might go ask that, that girl out on a date or so, whatever. Or guy. Yeah, whatever.
Or guy, Austin, or guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Or guys.
Yeah, or different. Yeah.
Or girls.
Yeah. So I think that's like that experience of like the retail experience and going in with someone to show them, oh, see how this fits you, right? Like you can't do that online. Like those things are
and the
lost
experiment.
In it. Yeah.
O'Neill, to answer your query. It's called enclosed cognition. So it's an experiment that was done in, I believe it was 2012. They gave these two controlled groups one garment. One control group, they told them that they were wearing lab coats, and then they were like made to do a series of tests. Yeah. The other control group received the same coat, but they were told they were wearing artist smocks. So based on the test results they saw, they quantified the approach that each group took. So the lab coat, of course, the people that were wearing quote unquote lab coats answered the tests in a more methodical way. The ones who were wearing the artist smocks thought that they took liberty to express their emotions and to arrive to their conclusions. So this is what I fucking love about this. Like, yeah, sometimes it's like it can be all very like masturbatory to question everything around you, but you only arrive to this answer if you even have that initial question. It's like, well, why the fuck am I wearing this hat today? Why am I wearing why am I wearing,
Yeah.
I think if we just asked more questions and didn't have this fear of looking dumb, then I think we'd find it. I think that everything that you want is out there for you to know and to experience.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
Well, what I was going to say is you've just explained overpacking. Like I used to do 3 bags that would become 4, like check 3 bags, the biggest, heaviest bags you can have that become 4. This time I went with 4 that became 5. And it's for exactly this reason, because I don't know how I'm going to feel on any given day. And it's like, I got to have options. And it's so, because these people that can plan ahead what they're doing, yeah, I look at the weather and yeah, I sort of think about like, okay, what do I have to do? But like, I don't know how I'm going to feel. It's a huge problem.
I was
God
cracking
damn it,
up.
Nick,
Hold on. I was cracking up. I was thinking like, we went on a trip to New York, and he's like, "Yeah, I asked Nick. Like Nick told me what I should wear, like what to bring for Fashion Week." I'm like, "Oh yeah, what did he tell you?" He's like, "Well, we're going for 5 days, mind you." He's like, "Yeah, he told me to bring 7 pairs of pants." like, bro, we ain't going to Fashion Week like that.
And he was clowning me. I was like, "Yeah, I talked to Nick, because that's my big issue too. I don't fucking know how to pack." And Nick, I don't know why you didn't tell. Why what you just said right now? Why didn't you say it to me before? Like, I don't know how. Because listen. After you told me how to pack and I bragged to him and I packed, I was still depressed. I was like, man,
Okay, but I'm gonna also say something. If I look like you, or if I look like you, I could only bring 3 white t-shirts and like 2 pairs of pants, because you look good in that. Like, if you look excellent, if your body is in amazing shape, you should only wear white t-shirts.
But see, okay, but I
Like,
took
this
that,
is-
I took that
I really
advice,
believe this.
Nick. I packed like 20 white t-shirts. I took your advice. But what you just said right now is how I feel. Like, on that day, I may not feel like wearing that white t-shirt and those trousers.
Yeah, you might want to wear a skirt.
Well, then you got to go buy. Then you got to go
I
buy
might
it.
want to layer myself. But you're right. It's how you feel. And I've never thought about that until you just said that.
But I've also said this about me. Like, all the Tumblr pictures, all of this is 100% insecurity.
Elaborate.
Yeah, I've always felt like my body was not good enough, or that I don't look right, or I'm too short. And so dressing is a way to cover up those insecurities.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I mean, it's why I wear platforms, it's why I wear heels, because if I'm short to my eyes, I'm like, okay, well, let me be taller. And I think I agree also with Nick on this idea of wear what looks good on your body, Why I always tell clients this when I'm outfitting them. I'm like, why are you doing yourself a disservice by shortening your torso or shortening your legs? Like, proportions, I mean, like, this is why we have the Vitruvian man that Da Vinci drew out, the man with the perfect proportions. I'm like, think about that when you dress. I don't know, whatever.
Johnny dropped some obscure references.
I
on
do,
this podcast.
but you.
But they're great.
But the takedown, the Nick Wooster version of that is just dress for your body
Dress
type.
for your body.
I mean, that
some
is
people
the
never hear that though. Some people don't hear that.
That's the single most important piece of fashion advice, style advice anyone can have.
But they want it to be more complicated. They want it to be more layered. When you say that, it's like you're a guru, and I traveled all the way up to this mountain to meet Nick and Johnny, and I'm like, Nick, Johnny, the fashion guru, tell me what I must do to be fresh. Dress according to how you build.
The delivery is
Like, that's
important.
it.
The delivery is important. You can say things that other people can't get away with saying. Like, I remember I told somebody at Vivienne one time, there were these shoes that were just so out there, and it was just like, those shoes were gonna wear him. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, I was like, you don't want to buy those. Like, don't buy those. And like, I just couldn't. It wasn't like, I didn't care about the sale. I cared more about like, bro, you're gonna walk out of here and be like, no one's gonna fuck with those shoes. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't get away with saying it the way you do, but some people do need to hear it. Like, it's not everything's for everybody.
I mean, the salesperson, right, would be like, well, if these don't look good on you, let me show you which ones are for you, or like, go for this.
I just told him to
like,
leave.
You told him to leave?
No.
Austin would take my sales.
That sounds like something Austin would do.
I was thinking about this too, because we
Colonizing sales.
Colonizing black women in sales.
terrible. This was fun.
This was fun. This was great. This has been that's it.
Oh.
That's it. You didn't hear Johnny just signal it by saying this was fun.
I guess Johnny
I
decided
didn't-
it was over.
No.
You see what he did? He was like, this was fun. Shit to do with it.
No.
This has been a special edition of Three Black Guys on the Couch, a special fashion edition.
The couch smells amazing, by the way, because of these two guys.
Are you trying to say that when Alzo, Gary,
It
and
doesn't.
Renee are sitting on the couch, it doesn't smell good? You can say it, be honest.
Don't.
It's not. It's
that
not. I haven't sat between them. I'm just basing it off of whatever these guys are wearing.
Yeah.
Aqua di Parma.
It was an honor.
What are you wearing, Nick?
Diptyque.
Oh.
Philosikos. The fig one.
And the suit?
Comme des garçons. En plus.
I'm wearing or does anyone care? No.
Yeah, I do.
I'm wearing No Maintenance. You know, shout out to No Maintenance. You know what I'm saying? My dog's over there.
I love that color on you.
Thank you.
It looks
so
really
much.
good.
Thank you so much, Austin. Do you like it too, Austin?
Yeah, it looks great.
Say you like it, bro.
I like it.
Okay.
Blue and brown is the chicest combination ever.
love it.
Aqua and chocolate is like the perfect thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Nick put me up on so many different ways to use color. Like he was talking about green.
Color theory.
Yeah, I had no idea. And he's like, well, Neil, you know there's different olive greens and military greens. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, like that green does not match that green.
Yeah.
And then I watched that Tom Sachs video and I'm like, man, what type of green I've been wearing on my
Yeah.
life? Yeah. So,
Well, color standards. I mean, it's like Ralph Lauren, there's a navy blue.
yeah.
There's not, I mean, there's a billion shades of navy blue, but a Ralph, there's one.
Valentino Rosso.
Right.
Red Valentino.
See, man, I'm gonna hang out with you guys more.
We
We didn't really get into that, you know.
We didn't-
any
well, we're gonna have
style.
back on the show. We're gonna have
Another episode.
100%.
Part
Yeah.
two.
Let me be real with you. I'd rather have more fashion episodes. I don't want Gary on the couch. You know, in his
I'd
tight
have
jeans.
less black guys on the couch.
That's not true. I love having black guys on the couch. That's what we call 3 Black Guys on the Couch. This has been 3 Black Guys on the Couch fashion episode. Thank you. Like and subscribe.